we were studying and we saw how we will be using interfaces in Selenium. We saw that Selenium as a tool is completely object oriented. Fine. WebDriver, if you talk about WebDriver, then WebDriver is nothing but it is an interface. Okay, so let's move forward from this, and just hold on, let my Eclipse open up. Right. Well, one more thing which we studied yesterday was the static stuff in the class. Static stuff, I told you that it's not the part of an object, it is simply something which is common for all the objects. Fine. And today we will actually use the utility of static, but before that, yesterday we talked about all these things, and in this day 2 out here, I had made this class gmail.java, wherein I told you that fine, we have gone to Gmail. Depending on the interface type, using interfaces we can dynamically change the browser. Okay, but how do I detect elements? How do I write into something after going to gmail.com? Fine. For that, I told you we need the knowledge of HTML language, and I had made this. Hold on. Okay, fine. What I'll do is I'll just make that html.xls again, so that I'm unable to detect it, whereas I saved it. Fine. Anyways, in this html.xls, we'll create columns like this. Like yesterday I told you that there are various HTML components, elements like you have a link, you have a text field, fine, you have a button in HTML, you have radio buttons, you have checkbox, fine. You have got link, text box, button, radio button, checkbox, and you have got an image. Sometimes you have got a drop list, fine, and you have got normal text. So that's what we saw yesterday, right? Fine. So now every element has a particular tag name in HTML, and every element has optional attributes and mandatory attributes. Why am I teaching you these things is because these things are very necessary to understand Selenium, how Selenium works, how Selenium identifies objects and all, everything. Okay. Now, what do you mean by optional attributes? What do you mean by mandatory attributes and all, everything? Let's talk about these things now. What is the tag name and all? Well, to understand this, first of all, let's talk about the browser Mozilla. Fine. In Mozilla, you have to install an add-on called Firebug. Why? Because Selenium, it works on the page source, and you cannot go to the page source like this and investigate the page. Firebug is a tool which helps you to investigate the page source. You just have to go to Google. Make sure you open up your Mozilla for installing it. Fine, and just type download Firebug. Okay, and you click on add-ons for Firefox, and you will actually get this page, and you click on add to Firefox. It will be installed as an add-on in Firefox. So Firefox will start. Make sure you open this page in Firefox. Okay, don't open an IE or something. Right. Once your Firefox starts, you will actually see an icon on the top right side out here. This Firebug icon will be coming here. Okay, and moreover in tools you will have the option Firebug. Okay, now if I click on this icon over here, Firebug, I get a window like this in my Mozilla. Okay, so hold on, I'll just improve the font size for this so that it's clearly visible. Okay, so let's say I am on the Gmail homepage and I want to investigate the page source. Then in Firebug you can click on this HTML tag, okay, and you can then click on this icon over here, the mouse icon. Find the arrow, so you click on it, and when you move your mouse, elements will start getting highlighted. It is similar to SPY and QTP, but thing is it gives you the page source. For example, if I move my mouse over this input field, then it will give me the code of this input field, that this is the code. Okay, now in HTML language everything is in tag names. For example, everything is in tags. What do I mean by saying that? This div over here is a tag, this label is a tag, this input is a tag. Okay, whatever is starting with the conical bracket is actually a tag name, and every tag has set of attributes associated with it. For example, technically what we say, that we say input is a tag, ID, type and name. These are the three attributes with the tag. Out here div is the tag name, class is an attribute. Out here label is the tag name, for is an attribute. Okay, so whatever is there in the conical brackets with the code, that's a tag name, and rest all of the things are the attributes of that tag. Okay, and with Selenium you will have to, like in Selenium you will have to frequently use Firebug and Firefox. Okay, now what about IE and what about Chrome? If you talk about Chrome, hold on, and in Chrome if I go to the website yahoo.com and I want to investigate the objects on this particular page of yahoo.com, right? So for that you can actually, in Chrome Firebug is only for Mozilla. In Chrome you just hit F8 of your keyboard. Okay, there's an inbuilt editor, sorry, there's an inbuilt Firebug kind of stuff present. You hit F8, sorry, not F8, F12. I always get confused between this. You hit F12 of your keyboard and you will get something like this. Okay. Now if I want to investigate this element, say IAC in Chrome, so I can right click on this and say inspect element. That particular element will be highlighted in the code. Okay, so I can directly also do like this. For example, I right click on anywhere out here, for example on this search button, and say inspect element. I actually get the code of that element. Fine. In IE, well, I have IE6, but in IE as well, the developer tool is present. The shortcut is again F12. Okay, in IE also, if you open IE8, you hit F12, you will get a window like this in which you can investigate the elements. Fine. So now hold on. Right, now how do I recognize all these HTML components, for example links, text fields and all, everything? Well, basically every element has a tag name associated with it. For example, tag name with link is A. Text field, for example, if I investigate any link in Firebug, for example, can't access your account, you'll always see that the tag name for all the links on all the web pages is a anchor tag. Many of you might be knowing this, right? For an input field, for example, username is an input field, the tag name is input, right? For a button, for example, this is the sign in button, right? If I look at it in Firebug, I'll see that the tag name is input. So for a button also tag name is input. From my experience, I know that in radio button and checkbox, the tag name is again input. Text field button, radio button and checkbox have the same tag name. Okay. In case of an image, for example, this is the image out here. On this Google is the image on the top out here. So if I look at this in Firebug, you'll actually see that the image has the tag name img. So this is with all the images on all the web pages. Fine. Drop list or drop down, fine, in which you have got multi-select values. For example, I go to the website. Quicker.com. On this, you have this particular drop list. Fine. The tag name for a drop list is select. Select is the tag name for a drop list. Alright. Text. Text has got no fixed tag actually. It can be under a div, span, label, h1, h2, h3, h4, whatever it is, right? So there is no fixed tag for text. It can be anywhere. Fine, right? So these are the elements and these are the tag names of that element. So we actually use these tag names to find the elements. Okay. Now every element has a set of optional and mandatory attributes. Okay. Let's talk about the mandatory attributes first. Right. In case of a link, for example, if I look at any link on this website, right, if I look at any link, I will actually see that the tag name for a link is A, and there is an attribute called href. This href attribute points towards the URL which will open when you click on the link. Fine. So out here optional attribute, and in mandatory attribute I'll write href. Href is the mandatory attribute, right? And it points towards the URL which will open when you click on the link. In case of a text field, you will always see that there is an attribute called type equals to text, which denotes that this is a text field. So in a text field, you will always have an attribute called type equals to text. In a button, you will always have an attribute called type equals to submit. Right? In radio, you will have type equals to radio. In checkbox, you have an attribute, mandatory attribute called type equals to checkbox. Now this is how you differentiate between text field, button, radio button and checkbox. All of them have the same tag name, but they have a different type attribute. Okay. Image has an attribute. For example, this on this gmail.com, this Google image on the top. Every image will have a source attribute. This source attribute will tell you the location from which this image is being loaded. For example, if I copy this and if I post this source, you will get a page like this. This is actually the image Google. It is loading from this particular URL out here on the top. Fine. So in image there is an attribute called source. In a drop list there is no mandatory attribute. Okay, everything is optional. In text as well there is no mandatory attribute. Everything is optional. So we combine The tag name, mandatory attributes and optional attributes to identify an object. Okay, what are optional attributes? Generally the optional attributes are ID, class, name. So these are very generic optional attributes which may or may not be present with any object. For example, if you go to Gmail, if I look at this text over here, Gmail is built on the idea that email can be, this is under the tag called P, that is para tag, right? But it's got no ID, nothing. But if you look at the email field over here, username field has got an ID, it's got a name attribute as well, right? It's got an attribute called value. Fine, I'll tell you what value is. Okay, so all these attributes are optional out here except the type. Right, now let's move forward. Okay, and let's see how Selenium can be used to identify an object and use the object with these particular sets of tag names, optional attributes and mandatory attributes. Right, well, if you go to Google, or if you go to seleniumhq.org, oh sorry, fine, and you go to the Java docs, these are the Java docs, and in this you will see that there is an interface called WebDriver which we saw yesterday. Fine. In this WebDriver interface there is a function called find element. This function is actually used to find any element on the page. Okay, so if I am on my Gmail page, what I'll do is I'll make a new project here, day 3. I'll include the Selenium jar files in the project. Also the ones in the lib, right? I'll copy the gmail.java from here and paste it in day 3 and I will start improving it. Okay, now what I need to do is I need to go to Gmail, enter username, password and click on the sign in button. Okay, now if you write driver dot, you will get the same function, find element. Okay, now this function is capable of finding any element on the page, a bug, a box, a text box, blink and all, whatever it is. Right, now what does it return you back? It returns you back an object of web element interface. What is this? Right, so if you click on this web element over here, you will go here and you'll find that there is an interface called web element. Okay, if you look at the description, it says that it represents an HTML element. Right, generally all interesting operations to do interacting with the page will be performed from this interface. Basically in Selenium everything is a web element. Don't confuse this with the web element of QTP. If you have studied QTP, forget about that web element which is there in QTP. Right, technically what these Selenium guys have done is they say that fine, on Gmail homepage everything is a web element. This button is also a web element, this link is also a web element, input field, text, image, everything is a web element. Okay, and inside this interface web element they have got common functions which you do with the element on the page. For example, you click on it, you clear the value of the input field, right? You get the size of the element, you get the text out of the element. Fine. Is the element enabled? Is the element being displayed? Is element currently selected? Send keys will type. Use this method to simulate typing into an element. Fine. So these are the functions which are there with a generic web element on a page. And who gives you the web element object? The find element function. It returns you the web element object. So I can write something like this: web element username field is equal to driver.find element. Okay, hold on, I will import this web element interface. Right now, how do I find the element? Okay, if you look at the find element function, then it accepts the reference of by class. Hold on, Venkat is asking a question. What is modifier and type besides in Java doc? Venkat, I am not able to get your point here. What is modifier and the type? Modifier and the type. Okay. This one. Okay, this is what the function returns back. For example, when we write normal coding, we write functions, right? If I write a function, say public void give name. Suppose this function is give name. Now void means that it is not returning anything. Okay, but I assume that you have basic knowledge of programming. At least you know what functions are. If you don't know, then you can go to my website qtpselenium.com and go to the Selenium training section and just watch the video number 1, right, and video number 2. In this I have taken up what functions are. Okay, right, a function can return your value. If function is not returning you anything, it is void. If function is returning you string, then that means you will have to write something like this: return some string, right? Similarly, we have a function called find element which returns us the object of web element interface. Okay, now so we write like this: web element username field equals to driver.find element, because this find element function, it returns you the web element. Okay, fine. Now how do I find it? You have to give the reference of by class over here. Yesterday I told you, right, there is a class called by, and in this by class everything is static. Okay, you can identify elements by class name, by CSS selector, ID, link text name, partial link text tag, everything. Okay, fine. So you can write over here by dot, you will have number of options by which you can find an element. I would take the very simplest one in the beginning, that is this username field. If you investigate it in Firebug. Now how do you find the element on the page? You will have to investigate the properties of this element on the page. For example, I need to find it on ID, so I'll write it over here by the ID. This is the ID, so this is the username field. Then password field. Okay, then driver.find element by the ID. If you look at the password field, then developer has also given this password field an ID. Okay, this is the ID in the password field. So you take this ID, right? After that, you need to click on the sign in button. So you will extract the sign in button. driver.find element by the ID. Again, developer is good out here. He has given the ID of the sign in button. So this is the ID of the sign in button. It's called sign in. So I'll copy this ID and paste it over here. So I have extracted the username field, I have extracted the password field, and I have extracted the sign in button. All these three fall under the web element category, web element interface. Right? What is the difference between, question is what is the difference between finding by ID, finding by XPath, tag name, partial. I'll talk about all these locator strategies. Okay? I'll talk about all these locator strategies. I'm starting with ID because it is quite simple to understand. Fine. Now, if you look at the web element interface, this one, then there are functions which once you have the web element interface reference, you can call any of these functions. For example, there is a function called send keys. This is used to type into an input field. Use this method to type into an element. Fine. So if I write over here, right, I'll talk about that method. Hold on, I'll talk about that. Username dot send keys. Your username, some say dummy username. So this will type dummy username out there. Similarly, if I write password field dot send keys, dummy password, and sign in button dot click. This will click on the login button. Well, I will not click on it because I just don't want to let Gmail know that I am using automation tools and hitting them on this website, so I will not click on it. Fine. So, but it will simulate clicking on it. I am very sure about it. So if you run this code and this will go here and okay, it fails. Hold on. Oh, the ID is actually email. I'm sorry. The ID of the username field is email. I had written ID only over there. Okay, anyways, I'll just run this again. You see that? It is writing the username and password, and it would also have clicked on the sign in button over here. Now, question being asked was, what if I want to run the script on IE or Chrome or any other browser? Basically, the thing is, if your website page source remains same on multiple browsers, then you can run this on multiple browsers as well. Okay, for example, if I try to run this on Chrome, right, I just have to set the Chrome system property. I'll just get that from my previous coding. Yeah, out here, if I want to run this on Chrome, you just have to change this to Chrome, the browser type to Chrome. And if I run this same code will execute on Chrome as well, provided the ID remains same on Chrome as well. The IDs, they remain same, that's why it's working on Chrome as well. Similarly, if I put IE over here, I know that on IE also, generally the developers, they don't write a different HTML code for different type of browsers. In the end, the browser is different, but HTML code is same, and Selenium works in the HTML code. That's why it is successful in so many browsers. Okay, so even if I write IE and run this, I have IE6. I'm not sure what this will do, but uh, in server you keep on getting this prompt. Hold on. i6 is not so good, frankly telling you. Yeah, it's working. Right? It is working on i6 as well. So that means IDs and all, they remain same. Right? Another question is being asked. You have mentioned username, password, name. Is this username user defined or pre-defined? This is user defined. I just kept it for your understanding. This is the object reference actually. I can give it any name. Okay? This is the object reference. When we write like this, car C equals to new car. What is C? C is the object reference, right? But instead of writing new car, I am calling this function, which is actually returning me the object of the car class, and towards this, which is actually returning me the object reference of web element. Fine. So, right. So you do it like this. Are you getting my point? Fine. Right. Now, this is fine. This is good. So with IDE I am able to run it on all the browsers and all everything. I just have to change the browser type over here. In this if-else statements, the driver gets initialized based on the interface thing, and the same commands they work. Why same commands they work on all the browsers? Because all the drivers, they implement the WebDriver interface. Okay, and in WebDriver interface you have all the commands defined. Right. Now, what if you don't find an ID? What if I am not able to find an ID of an object on the page? Well, then you have got other locator strategies. Class name, CSS ID, link text name, partial link text tag name, XPath. Right. Then generally what we do is that if the ID is not there, okay, or if the name is also not there, right, you can also identify an object by name. For example, in Gmail page, this email field out here has a name as well. The developer for Gmail, they are good, they give everything. But for example, I want to read the text over here. I want to read what is written out here. Okay, this para tag has got no ID, no name, nothing. So how will I identify this? So to identify this, generally we either use CSS selector or we use XPath. So these are the most commonly used things, right? CSS selector, if you use them, this is good, right? It is actually faster than XPath. I'll talk about what XPath is, what CSS selector is. Generally what happens is that what I have observed is Selenium scripts, if you use XPath to identify the objects, they run a little bit slow on I8, I9, but with CSS selectors if you use, the scripts are a little faster, execution speed and all. Fine. Now, okay, so we have got XPath and CSS selector. Let's start with XPath. Let's see what XPath is actually, how do we use it, right? Now, to give you an example of XPath, I'll start with, say, XPath is something which is like an address of the element on the web page. Okay, for example, hold on. Right. If I go to, hold on. Right. For example, I want to, this is my sign-in text on the page. The sign-in text is written over here. Okay. And I want to read this text. Okay. So what I will do is I will form an XPath over here. I will pass the complete HTML document. See, the HTML document is starting with the HTML tag. Fine. So to make an XPath, what I will do is I'll make the XPath like this. The first tag name on the page is HTML, right? Okay, now I'm talking about the complete XPath here. Okay, I'm talking about the complete XPath out here. Okay, complete XPath will work like this. That is, it will start with the base of the HTML document, HTML. In the HTML document, you have got two tags, head and body. Generally, in the head tag, you have the title of the page and other meta tags and all, everything, CSS information, JavaScript information, fine. And all the elements are present inside the body tag. Okay, so we start like this. In the HTML tag, there is a body tag. Inside the body tag, you have, right now in this particular Gmail page, you have a div. Okay, so what I'll do is I'll write there is a div tag, right? In this div tag, there are 3 div tags and many script tags. My element in which I am interested is under the second div tag, this one. Okay, the sign in text is actually under the second div tag. So what I'll do is I'll write over here /div2. That means go inside the second division. Then inside the second division, you have got many other divisions as well. You have got 3 divisions out here, right? And my sign in text is present in the first division. Okay, out of all these 3 divisions, the sign in text is present in the first division. So what I'll do is I'll write div1. Then inside this division, right, you have inside the first division I am talking about. Hold on. Yeah. Inside the first division, you have got another div tag, and under that you have got h2 tag. Fine. So you write like this /div/h2, and in the h2 tag you have got sign in written. So this becomes your complete XPath. Okay, fine. Now you don't have to find complete XPath like this. Okay, you can actually go to Google, and in Firefox you have to type, in Firefox, I'm talking about Firefox, right? I have installed an add-on called FirePath which gives me XPaths. But to install that add-on, make sure that Firebug is installed on your system. Okay, it's an add-on which adds into the Firebug, right? So you type over here, it's not there in my Firebug right now. I'll just write download FirePath and go to the first link over here, right? And click on the add to Firefox link out here, and then you can hold on, just a minute, let it add into my file. Okay, it's giving issues, it's not okay. So you click on install and you'll have to restart Firefox. So once your Firefox it restarts, fine, and if you again go to Gmail page, say gmail.com, and open Firebug, in Firebug you will see that you are getting an option called FirePath over here. In this FirePath, if you enable FirePath, and in FirePath you select generate absolute XPath. In FirePath you select generate absolute means complete XPath. If you move your mouse over any element, say the username field, I will get the complete XPath of the username field here. If you go to the password field, I will get the password field complete XPath. So these are the complete XPaths which you can use to identify the elements on a page. But again, the question arises out here is that, okay, will this be good enough to use? This XPath is very accurate. It will definitely point towards the object. It will start from the base of the document and it will go to the object. But the problem is that in future, if something changes in the application, say a new tag gets added in between, out here, some new tag comes up, then you will have a tough time changing all the XPaths in your application. You will have to go into code, change everywhere. This will be a very high, it will be something which will take a lot of efforts from your side. Okay, so you should not write a script which requires a lot of changes when something changes on the page, right? So to avoid this, we use partial XPaths. Partial XPaths, they do not start from base of the document. Okay, to check out the partial XPath, you can actually uncheck this, right? You don't generate the absolute XPath. Sorry, right? You don't generate the absolute XPath, and you again move your mouse. Suppose I move my mouse over the username field. Then it shows something like this. I'll copy this. Don't copy the dot. Okay, only copy from double slash. Partial XPath looks something like this. Double slash means it's a partial XPath. If you look at the complete XPath, it never starts from double slash. So double slash means it's a partial XPath. Star means any element on the page. Okay, instead of the star, you can also put the tag name input, right? Because the tag name for this field is input. Okay, right? And then in the brackets you have written @ID equals to email. That means there is an input field on the page whose ID is email. This is the partial XPath. Okay. Now, for example, let me take a very generic example. Like I am on the website in.rediff.com. Okay, and I look at the XPath of say the link best deals. So I get an XPath like this. So I get that there is any element on the page whose ID is test wrapper. So if you look at your page, hold on. Yeah, this is the ID. So it's saying that this is a div whose ID is test wrapper. So basically I can write this is a div whose ID is test wrapper. Inside this, go to the division 2. So inside this I will go to the second division, that is this division, because there are two divisions out here. One is this one is this one. So I will go inside the second division, and inside the second division there is a h2 tag. So inside the second division here is the h2 tag, right? And inside there is a link A. So this is how you form partial XPaths. You don't start from the base of the HTML document. You start somewhere in the middle where you get the ID, and you then take the relative path from that particular element. So XPath finding will be very easy with Firebug. You can go to any element and you can just look at the XPath, copy it and use it in the code. But again, the question rises over here. Firebug is good. It helps me in Mozilla. But what about IE and Chrome? How do I get XPaths in IE and Chrome? Well, till now, whatever I have automated, most of the times, what happens is that the XPath which is there in the XPath which is valid in Firefox is also valid in IE and Chrome, because the page source it remains same. So you get the XPath, okay, and you use it in IE and Chrome, right? For IE I am using this Excel sheet. Hold on. Venkat has given me a link. Okay, let's look into this link. Okay, Venkat, does this give you an XPath in IE? Oh, that's great, because I was not knowing about it. What I used to do, I used to get the XPaths in what do you say, Firefox, and use it over there. So you guys can just take this link, okay? And what you need to do, you just need to open this XLSM file in Internet Explorer. Okay, so basically you download this file. I'll download it. Let's see whether it's.
Hi, Ashish.
Yeah. Tell me.
Yeah, you can download that sheet, and yeah, it will show the expert and the relative expert also. Like once you need to run the macro, like reset proceed. You have downloaded. You need to enable the macro. Yeah.
Okay, I'll do it after the class. I'll check this out.
Yeah, fine. Yeah, okay. Yeah.
I will check this out. This is something which is new to me as well. Right. Now, in this, okay, but generally what runs in Firefox also runs in IE and all everything. Now in Selenium you have okay. In Selenium, now if I go to my code and if I plan to use XPaths to write username and password, or to find username and password, so I'll just comment out the ID part of the code, this part, and now I will use XPaths to identify the elements. So I will use over here by the XPath. So I'll find the email field by the XPath, and you can use partial as well as full XPath. So if you use this partial XPath, you will get like this. You should refrain from using star, because it will, if there are two elements on the page with ID, it becomes problem. So just give the tag name input, then the password. This is the XPath for password. Fine. And by the XPath of the sign in button as well. So if you run this code, okay, it runs in IE because the browser, so in IE also it works fine, right? If I change my browser to say Mozilla, then also it will work fine. Right? Okay, so we are all good. Nice. Now XPath is good, so you can use XPath and you can identify the object, right? Now make sure what mistakes people do in XPaths. Generally what they do is that they forget a bracket, or they forget a single quote. Fine. So they forget all these things, and they actually then fall into a little bit difficult things. Actually, if you use a wrong XPath over here, suppose if I forget to give this single quote, and if I run this, you will see that you get an exception in the code, right? So there are various exceptions you can get if you are using exception. Invalid selector exception. That means that the XPath which you have used has a syntax error. Okay. I will talk about Kanan. I'll talk about that. How to use multiple attributes, how to identify elements with I'll talk about it. Fine. Right. And the given selector is either invalid or does not result into a web element, right? right? When I go into some advanced topics, right, in coming days, I will talk about everything: how to make your own XPaths, how to make your own custom XPath, how to introduce multiple attributes in the XPath. I have just identified the ID. If I have to use multiple things, so how do you do that? I'll talk about everything, right? So basically, this invalid selector exception, don't think that there's a problem in your application if you are getting this. This you will get when you are given an invalid XPath. But if I give an XPath which is not there in the application, that is, this ID is not present, XPath is correct, but this particular ID is not present on the page. And now if I run this, I will get an exception which will say that no such element exception. This describes that Selenium is not, the XPath is correct, but Selenium is not able to find the element. So don't get confused between these two. If you are getting this, then make for sure you are given some syntax error in the XPath. Okay, right?